You may all be seated. Honorable members, before we proceed with the next vote, the Chief Whip has brought to my attention that there was a bit of an issue yesterday with the votes being brought early than the time. So I want to make sure that no member or no honorable member is aggrieved because of that. We are running at a bit of a high pace. I think we're doing well in terms of the time. So there are 2 votes that we might still do before lunch. So I just want to bring to the attention of the House so that we prepare ourselves accordingly. Are we all in order? All in order. Thank you very much, honorable members. I will then at this point request the Secretary to read the next order.
Vote 3, Provincial Treasury, Western Cape Adjustments Appropriations Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I recognize the Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm again pleased today to speak to the adjusted estimates of Vote 3, the Provincial Treasury. The Provincial Treasury, of course, is in the main responsible for implementing the provincial fiscal strategy by, as I mentioned in the medium-term budget policy statement, by continuing to focus on proper expenditure management, proper revenue management, and maintaining a balanced budget in the Western Cape. And of course, by continuing to apply the principles of allocative efficiency, fiscal sustainability, fiscal consolidation, and fiscal discipline in the Western Cape. The main appropriation of 357.3 million rand has of course been adjusted down by 19.3 million rand to 338 million for the 2019-20 financial year. I will of course not deal with all the adjustments which are set out in the adjusted estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure, but I will highlight some of the adjustments which of course are linked to the implementation of our fiscal strategy in the Western Cape. We will, amongst others, be shifting an amount of 395,000 to Vote 1 for the Department of Premier for broad brand connectivity for the client walk-in centre in respect of the supplier evidence base. This will, of course, allow those suppliers who want to do business with the Western Cape Government to more readily access us and get information they may need to respond to government tenders in the Western Cape. We will also be shifting 17.6 million rand from Programme 2, with the largest portion of that shift amounting to 14.3 million rand going to Programme 4 for the Western Cape Financial Management Support Grant. And of course, as members know, that support grant provides financial assistance to municipalities to improve the overall financial governance within municipalities, inclusive, of course, of optimizing revenue, of improving the credibility and responsiveness of the municipal audit outcomes, and addressing institutional challenges. We, of course, remain committed to filling all the critical vacancies, but compensation of employees has been adjusted down by 6.9 million rand due to the late filling of posts, attrition, and internal appointments, and the lower uptake of trainees. Earmarked allocations amounting to about 4.6 million rand were surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund. Of this total, 4.6 million has been surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund in relation to the infrastructure development support funding, which is awaiting approval, or the structure, which is waiting approval by the Department of Public Service and Administration. 10 million rand of the earmarked allocation has been surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund in respect of the Financial Good Governance Grant, pending the finalisation of the framework in respect of the grant. And an additional 571,000, I beg your pardon, was financed through the Provincial Revenue Fund to the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board to refund overpaid taxes in the case of Hollywood Sportbook. Of course, Speaker, the Provincial Treasury implements our provincial fiscal strategy precisely so that we can maintain stability, credibility, and transparency when it comes to the budget process in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize Honorable Nkondla.
Thank you, Speaker. Let me welcome in our midst. I see we have the brand new from the box head of the Department of Treasury. I just want to greet him. Moving further, Chair, Speaker, from the onset, allow me to express concerns around the amounts of rollovers by various provincial departments, which have totaled to over 156.1 million. This includes also some of the COE funds that also had to be surrendered from some of the departments and the entities, which actually suggest that there's a lot to be done in as far as tight mechanisms to ensure fiscal discipline and a full optimal expenditure of budgets by provincial treasury and also the departments. I think this is a matter that we've also discussed in the committee, also in SCOPA, in ensuring that as we engage with budget, it becomes important when Parliament is required to actually approve budget, that such a practice and culture of optimum use of those budgets is actually instilled. Having said that, 19.5 million has been surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund in this adjusted budget, you are told, which I think also brings another area of concern, especially I think the one on the what is termed savings on the compensation of employees, which is done through delays, as Minister has just alluded to, delays in filling of post and staff attrition, which I think is a cause for concern. It is a cause for concern because, again, we had, I think, especially during the discussion of the annual reports of the last financial year, of how employees of the departments, including this provincial treasury, are experiencing very strained working environments as pressure mounts on them, and that is demonstrated through the high take-up of their sick leave. So this becomes important in appreciating the human capital that we have, and also looking at opportunities for upward mobility, especially at senior management levels, as one of the things that we have raised to say when there are vacancies, it becomes important that the priority is given to some of the equity limitations that are already glaring in the department, especially in ensuring that we bring in women and Black women in particular. Once again, to welcome also the innovation of the e-system, including the walk-in center that will actually allow all those suppliers who need to be part of the database of the province. That is something that is welcomed. Having said that, Speaker, amongst other issues that are very critical to note in the entire management of the supply chains of provincial government is, I think, an alignment that needs to be done with the other department that the minister is sitting over, of the ease of doing business, the red tape, but most importantly, contract management, especially as it relates to local government, because these are some of the areas we've seen an increase of litigations and sometimes delays of payments to SMMEs. So if we're talking about a fiscal strategy that promotes growth, those are some of the issues that are supposedly to be a priority in the discussions of provincial treasury, and I think supporting in particular the unit or the sub-program that is focusing on the financial oversight of the municipalities. And this actually speaks to the fiscal strategy that must indeed look at how to support municipalities as part of the mandate of the department in any way, because this is not something new. Because if one, as Minister related earlier on, if one looks at the PERO and the MERO, the continuous assessment of the growth of this province that he was boasting about. I think he's not mentioning the other reality of the challenge of the GTPR contributions of the municipalities, especially those municipalities that historically, are servicing the very poorest communities. If you talk about municipalities like the Matsikamas of this province, where you see that their Gini coefficients remain very high at around 6.61, closer to 1, which indicates high levels of inequality and poverty in those areas. And that information actually is produced by the Provincial Treasury. And the question that one always asks is the extent to which this information is therefore utilized in the actual planning and the allocation of resources, including at this point where you need to utilize the budget, as we've seen with the safety plan, to actually consider one of the biggest challenges in the province, and that challenge of inequality. So in conclusion, Chair, it becomes important, I think, also to make mention of the fact that one of the observations is that the department has got an oversight responsibility over the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. And under these adjusted estimates, the board will receive over 571,000 additional budget. The Auditor General awarded an unqualified audit opinion with findings to this board. It should be of concern that this department has failed to ensure that an entity that reports directly to it does not obtain a clean audit with no findings. So these are some of the things that when you talk about a clean audit, obviously when you oversee some of the entities under you, an expectation is that at least the practice must also rub off to the entity itself. So lastly, perhaps when Parliament reopens...
Order, Honourable Member, will you please take your seat? Honourable Murray, will you please help me with that?
I couldn't find the button to switch it off.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Your apologies accepted. Sorry, Honourable, my apologies, Honourable Nkondlo. Please proceed with your speech.
Okay, how many minutes do I still have? Speak.
You're still fine.
Deputy Speaker. Sure.
You're still fine, Honourable Nkondlo. We've got 1 minute and a half.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I think one of the issues would like to highlight on this particular budget, and I think also an issue we've raised with the Minister through the committee, is in also the austerity measures. It becomes important to also not look only in the traditional ways of looking at austerity. One of the things I think we continue as governments to miss when we talk austerity is actually to look at the cost of running a business of government and its affairs. And I think in this regard, we make mention of some of the capital projects and the cost of delays of projects, and sometimes the cost of the type of suppliers that we utilize that end up, some of them I think mentioned in public works, would actually run a risk of liquidity to a point where that impacts on the projects themselves. Would like to submit that when Parliament reopens, we will need to get more details on how much the province has taken back to the Provincial Revenue Fund. It is a public purse, and the public should know how much the province has on its reserves and what will they be used for. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Nkondlo. Honourable members, I now recognize Honourable Bartman.
Honourable Speaker, fellow South Africans, finance isn't always the sexiest topic, and back in the day, if I remember correctly, not in my time, but butchers used to wear heels to avoid stepping on blood. And men in upper echelons of society also used to wear heels in order to signify that they do not engage in hard labor, which you need for being flat on the ground. Women then over time took over the convention of heels and turned it into a fashion accessory, which again started to evolve into the representation of empowerment. So please bear with me with the finance vote when I try to turn the butcher's heels into heels of empowerment. The purpose of the adjustment budget process is to provide an opportunity to revise the main budget in response to the changes that may have been affected in terms of a particular department during that year before the financial year comes to a particular conclusion. And in this particular year, the severe drought, safety and security concerns have affected each department, and similarly, we have then had to make provision for the budget cuts as part of the main budget process in the next financial year. In this particular budget adjustment, vote 3, Provincial Treasury, I welcome the provision for funds for the earlier than anticipated filling of vacant posts as part of program support, accounting support, as well as the supply chain management sub-programs, and also welcome the commitment for the current vacant posts that will be filled before the end of the financial year. Further, I welcome the additional provision of 1.2 million rand for the Supplier Evidence Bank Client Walk-in Centre, which will assist entrepreneurs with the supplier management service in respect of the Western Cape supplier database. Further, we welcome the areas identified related to travel, consumable items, venue hire, and consultancy fees, where the department have indicated that it has saved costs and reallocated them to programs that will have a significant impact on the residents of this province, such as the shifting of 395,000 rand to vote 1 of the Department of the Premier in order to provide broadband connectivity for the client walk-in centre in respect of the Supplier Evidence Bank. These suppliers can now thus receive direct assistance from the provincial government as well as support for tender documentation. And I will definitely be communicating this to both the chairpersons of Laingsburg Sake Kamer and the Laingsburg Black Business Forum should this vote be accepted. Further, the 14.3 million rand in additional funds to develop financial human capacity within municipal areas to enable a sustainable local financial skills pipeline is welcomed given the current local government capacity constraints. After having read the overview of the adjusted provincial and municipal infrastructure investment, I would like to indicate to Mr. Mbombo also that also after seeing the progress personally at the hospital and the clinic, that those upgrades are coming along nicely within the Laingsburg community. I would like to thank my colleagues on the Finance and Budget Committees for the engagement and contribution, for the Minister, for HOD Ms. Kantana, the Provincial Treasury and its entity, for their hard work and dedication towards the Western Cape Province and their resilience during what has been a very difficult economy in South Africa. I would also like to thank our procedural officers, Ms. Zaida Adams, who advises us on finance, and Ms. Wasima Kamish Ahmed, who advises us on the Budget Committee. Your sound advice and commitment to the province is truly appreciated. Minister Mania, previously you reminded us about the spekboom's resilience, but today I would like to remind you about the spekboom's versatility and adaptability. Did you know that the spekboom leaves are edible? You can use the leaves to quench your thirst, treat exhaustion, dehydration, heat stroke. You can use the crushed leaves to provide relief for blisters. Chewing it can treat a sore throat and mouth infections. Juice leaves are used as an antiseptic and for skin ailments, and its stems can be used to build huts, homes, and thatched roofing. In Mozambique, for example, breastfeeding mothers consume spekboom leaves in order to increase their milk supply, and during previous famines, the Zulu culture used to use it in order to prevent dehydration. Further, the spekboom assists in removing carbon dioxide from the air because it acts like a carbon sponge, improving the very air that we breathe, absorbing between 4 and 10 tons of carbon per hectare. And the spekboom Foundation actually indicated that, quote, the spekboom's capacity to offset harmful carbon emissions is compared to that of moist subtropical forests. This remarkable plant is unique in that it stores solar energy to perform photosynthesis at night. This makes spekboom 10 times more effective per hectare at carbon fixing than any tropical rainforest. Quote closed. So as we embark on 2020, let us ask ourselves, how can we be as resilient as the spekboom, as thoughtful as the spekboom, as versatile as the spekboom, as adaptable as the spekboom, and as innovative of the spekboom? Members and officials, I wish you all a festive season, and to those who are traveling, please be safe. Let us wear our seatbelts, whether we are sitting in the driver's seat, navigator seat, DJ seat, or nap time seats. Let us not spiral ourselves into debt in order to impress people that we only see once or twice a year, and let us buy our stationery supplies first, and to the youth, let us live our lives responsibly. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bartman. I now recognize Honorable Makamba Boja, or she's not present. All right. Honorable Heron. Thank you, Honorable Heron. Honorable Christians. Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable Murray. I recognize Honorable Murray.
Well, let me just see if I got anything here to say. Don't laugh. Mr. Chairman, I think that I will pass this one. I just want to know that this is Treasury.
Your
I
time
want to
is
know,
up. You've concluded your minutes. You may proceed. You've got 1 minute. Thank you. Honorable Murray,
Mr.
please
Speaker, I
proceed.
wanted to ask whether we are considering asking national government to recalculate our equitable shares, conditional grants, etc. This needs a re-look at. The money that they give us, we have very little, I think it's 3.6% own funds. The rest we rely on national government. And the equitable share, the formula used, and the conditional grants, we will seriously have to engage with National Treasury on this. The Western Cape has become a suction point for people desperate to seek work, to seek a better life. I don't blame them if they come here, but the money must follow. I believe finance must follow function. Give us the function, we perform, but send the money with it. And I want to ask our Treasury to please engage with national government on these two issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. With the absence of Al-Jama, I recognize the Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. I thought for a moment that this would be the rare occasion on which the Honourable Murray had nothing to say, but he recovered. And to answer his question, yes, we are interacting with Provincial Treasurer on the matters to which you refer, and in fact we are going to conduct research on alternative division of revenue models in the Western Cape. No, the Honourable Member certainly did not disappoint. I wish also to associate myself with Honourable Bartman's comments about the festive season, and also to congratulate her on her deep dive research into the merits of the spectrum, which brings me to the Honourable Nkondlu, who raises a concern about compensation of employees. Chair, Speaker, in this constrained fiscal environment, of course, we have to be prudent and we have to maintain our COE expenditure ceilings. But of course, by not at the same time compromising service delivery in the Western Cape. On the specific issue about filling vacancies in the Provincial Treasury, which we discussed at length with the Honourable Member in committee, we are absolutely committed to filling critical vacancies in the Provincial Treasury. I would also like to thank the Minister for her compliments in respect of the walk-in centre, and also associate myself with her comments on assisting municipalities, hence of course the Western Cape Financial Management Support Grant to which I referred. On the question of the 571,000 Rand in the gambling environment, I'd wish to assure the Honourable Member that this was a result of a software error, and we've obviously reached an amicable settlement in this matter. The Honourable Member also raises the question about whether there are not efficiencies which can be gained in the procurement environment, and I completely associate myself, as we discussed in committee, with that view, which is why in the medium-term budget policy statement I announced that over the medium term we will be looking at procurement strategies and strategies to achieve efficiencies and savings in the Western Cape. Speaker, in conclusion, I would obviously like to thank Provincial Treasury's former acting head, official Jalinda Gantana, and of course Team Finance for their dedication and professionalism and tireless commitment to the Provincial Treasury, to the budget process, and to the people of the Western Cape. But I would also like to extend a special welcome to the new head official of Provincial Treasury, Mr. David Savage, who brings extensive experience at National Treasury and at international finance institutions to government in the Western Cape. And I'm sure the House would like to join me in wishing him luck in his new position. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, honorable members. That concludes the debate on vote number 3. And now we are moving to the next vote, but the 3 minutes break before then, just to switch between the votes, so that your department